I would now like to call on the next keynote speaker, Professor Fred Tsai, who chaired the main committee of the International Conference on Population and Development, which held in Cairo in 1994. Professor Fred Tsai is from Ghana and has been a powerful voice since Cairo for the health and rights of people, including the sexual and reproductive health and rights for all. And you will see that he is celebrating me today because he's wearing a Nigerian dress. Professor Fred Tsai.
Thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Chair, Excellency, President of Kiribati, Excellencies here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad the Chair permitted us to speak from here because, as you've already noticed, age and the infirmities associated with age would not have permitted me to come to the podium today. But 20 years ago, I stood at a podium like this one here, and as chairman of the main committee, presented to the International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo the program of action, which had been negotiated during several prep comms and the past several days in Cairo. I would like to acknowledge with thanks the able negotiating power of the vice chairman of the main committee, Ambassador Nick Bigman, whom I see among you now, and the visionary leadership of the Secretary General of the conference, Dr. Nafis Sadiq, without whom the program of action could not have been successfully negotiated. As I looked out on the delegates that day, I saw something extraordinary. I saw hundreds, perhaps thousands of women from Asia and Africa, the Americas and Europe, women in business suits, saris, kaftans, and bubus, women who had come to change the world. Unlike earlier UN population conferences, the Cairo meeting had invited the full participation of NGOs and civil society. That meant that women's groups from all over the world had a voice in the deliberations, and I can assure you they profoundly shaped the outcome of the conference. The women who participated in Cairo helped break decades of gridlock on population and development. For years, debate had raged over, quote, 1974, development is the best contraceptive, end of quote, or 1984, population is a neutral factor in development. In Cairo, however, the world's nations agreed that population growth and unsustainable resource consumption threaten our common future, and they approved a groundbreaking plan to address those problems by ensuring holistic, people-oriented development, including access to family planning and reproductive health services, alleviating poverty, and securing the full human rights of girls and women. The Cairo Program of Action was a visionary document which, if fully implemented, would have far-reaching positive impacts on human well-being. And in the years since Cairo, some of that vision has indeed become a reality. I'm proud to say that globally, maternal mortality has declined by nearly half since 1990. Contraceptive use has risen by 10%, and fertility has fallen by nearly a quarter between 1990 and 2010. At the same time, the quality of care has improved in many places as the focus has shifted from meeting demographic targets to addressing the needs of individuals, families, and communities. I'm also proud of the work we have done on HIV/AIDS. When I stood at the podium in Cairo, I did not know how much that disease would ravage our societies and reshape our priorities. But fortunately, we have bent the arc of the epidemic. Since 1990, new HIV infections have declined by a third worldwide. My country, Ghana, the rate of HIV has been reduced by 2/3 since 2003. Unfortunately, our progress on HIV/AIDS has too often come at the cost of basic family planning and reproductive health care. It is being addressed. Fortunately, we will succeed. Despite these accomplishments, there is so much more we must undo, as you have just been reminded by the Executive Director and so clearly put out in the excellent report of the Secretary General. There are still 220 or more million women in the world who want to prevent pregnancy but are not using effective modern methods of contraception. This results in 30 million unplanned births, 20 million unsafe abortions every year. In developing regions, only half of all pregnant women receive the minimum recommended prenatal care. Progress is extremely uneven, with my own region, sub-Saharan Africa, falling the farthest behind. In my country, Ghana, a third of married women have an unmet need for family planning even today. And while we have made great progress on maternal mortality, women are still losing their lives while bringing new life into the world. Every minute of every day, at least one woman dies from complications related to pregnancy and childbirth. 287,000 estimated every year. And most of these deaths are completely preventable. Here too, the inequities are stark. A woman in Niger faces a 1 in 7 chance of dying in childbirth. For a woman in Sweden, that risk is only about 1 in 30,000. Maternal deaths are devastating to families and communities. A mother's death also costs the life of a newborn, as well as previous children under 5. Families undergo enormous emotional and economic loss. Uneven progress on reproductive health means that there are still pockets of high fertility and rapid population growth. Unfortunately, that growth is taking place in the poorest countries that are the least able to provide for their people. In those countries, millions of unemployed youth are already struggling as the gap between their aspiration and their prospects grows even wider. This is a tragic situation. It is a volatile situation which threatens our collective peace and security. And while the international community has recognized that women's rights are human rights, full equality for women remains maddeningly elusive. In developed and developing countries alike, women continue to endure discrimination, rape, domestic violence, and trafficking, coerced marriage, and coerced childbirth. This is a human tragedy and a waste. It deprives girls and women of the chance to achieve their potential, and it deprives the world of their vital contributions. Finally, we have failed to put reproductive health and women's rights at the top of the development agenda. 20 years ago, the world's nations agreed that development and population issues are indivisible. But when the Millennium Development Goals were drafted, sadly, reproductive health was not on the original list of goals, though a target was added much later. The resulting lowering of attention to family planning and other reproductive health services cost us dearly unnecessarily in women's and girls' lives lost. As we draft the next generation of development objectives, and as we discuss ICPD post-2014, we must ensure this time that reproductive health is at the top of the international agenda. Putting reproductive health at the top of the agenda is the right thing to do, is the humane thing to do, is the smart thing to do. Research shows that for every dollar governments invest in family planning, an average of 6 can be saved in other development areas. Analysis by the US Agency for International Development shows that for every dollar invested in family and reproductive health, a significant savings occurs across sectors. Savings in other development areas range from $2 in Ethiopia, more than 6 in Guatemala and Bangladesh, and up to 9 in Bolivia. We know that reproductive health is a proven poverty-fighting strategy and a cornerstone of public health. Indeed, if all women who need it had access to family planning and reproductive health services, we could prevent 79,000 maternal deaths and more than 1 million infant deaths each year. And because family planning leads to lower birth rates, it also saves money that nations can invest in healthcare, infrastructure, and job creation. This is the demographic dividend that helps spur explosive growth in the Asian tiger countries over the last few decades. African nations now have an unprecedented opportunity to seize a demographic dividend. But if, and only if, our countries can reduce fertility rapidly and concurrently invest in youth. When I think of the challenges before us, I reflect back on the long journey I have made from my village in Osu, which is now a suburb of Accra, where I grew up, to stand before or sit before you today. And I remember the faces of those who walked beside me on that journey. I remember the faces of my mother and my aunties in the women's compound, who taught me so much about the strengths, struggles, and aspirations of women. From my days as a doctor in Ghana, I remember the motionless face of a 15-year-old girl in the morgue, a girl who had died because she did not have the reproductive health education and care she needed and had to recourse to unsafe abortion. I remember the shy faces of young women with obstetric fistula who bore children before their bodies were ready and who suffered horribly as a result. And I remember the radiant faces of the women at the Cairo conference who were determined to change the world. I will not forget those faces. I hold them in my heart, and they remind me that I must remain with this cause for as long as the good Lord permits me. But this may be the last time I have the privilege to speak from this podium. Today, as I look on your faces, I see the same caring and commitment, and I see the future. We have come a very long way, but there is still a long way to go. On bended knees, old and creaky, I urge you to complete the journey we started such a long, long time ago. I urge you to make sure that women's rights and reproductive health are at the top of the 21st century development agenda. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, may I, on bended knee still, ask the leadership of Africa to move away from anachronistic cultural positions and ideologies, to remember and domesticate the wonderful consensuses that they have built in their own meetings and conferences, such as Maputo and Nigeria, etc. And it is only by domesticating and implementing those consensuses that Africa can move. Only when we all move, as have been said already, and the leaders of our various countries take charge and lead the fight for these rights, can we make this a better world for our daughters and our wives and sisters, and indeed for us all. I thank you for this kind invitation.
I thank Professor Sai for such inspiration. Rajesh.
Thank you, Executive Director.